All right, everybody, welcome into another Ultimate New Orleans Sports Show. This time, a Saints at Bucs edition. We thank you very much for joining us here on WWL. I am Ross Jackson. This is Doug Mouton, and for the next 30 minutes, you are about to be entertained with the greatest sports talk you have ever heard. Thank you very much for being here. Doug, a lot to discuss going into this week, but obviously, you know where it's all going to start.
Yeah, look, big promises, by the way. Yeah, look, the Saints and the Bucs, it matters a lot more to the Bucs than it does to the Saints.
Sure.
What's really important for the Saints right now is obviously the future.
Yeah.
And I want to start with Tyler Shough, the quarterback. And there are two questions around Tyler Shough right now, and they're sort of the same, but a little different.
Yeah.
Have we seen enough from Tyler Shough so far to say that the Saints are not going to make a big investment in the offseason in a quarterback, and he's the guy going into 26? And the two parts are, do you think Kellen Moore believes that? Will the Saints go with him? And then should they go with him? What's your opinion?
Yeah.
Two very different questions.
Yeah, so I don't think that we've seen enough yet to crown him the 2026 guy.
We haven't, or Kellen Moore hasn't?
I'm saying we first. We have not seen enough. And I don't know, and I'm going to extend that answer to Kellen Moore. I don't know if Kellen Moore has seen enough yet either. It's not because I think that Tyler Shough has done anything negative.
No.
It's just that, like, you still have 5 games left.
Yes.
To say that you've seen enough now is to ignore the opportunity that's ahead to get an evaluation. And I think that that's very much the way that I would expect Kellen Moore and the Saints to look at it.
And I would agree with that, although it sure seems like the road we're going on says that he's going to be the guy next year. And I would say, if I had to guess right now, I would say I think probably he should be.
Yeah,
I think I've seen enough to think probably my mind could be changed in the final 5. But I think so.
Yeah, that would be the best case scenario for New Orleans, too. Go into the draft knowing that you have the quarterback for 2026, invest around him. That's a good place to be.
Because you need a lot of other stuff. All right, let me show you what's on the menu tonight on this edition of the Ultimate New Orleans Sports Show. We're going to be drinking, not so much eating, which is probably a good thing, but we are going to be drinking on this show. On the large plates, we will talk Tyler Shough, and we're going to talk it with our guest. We're going to go in depth and on Kellen Moore. Are we losing confidence at all in Kellen Moore at this point? And then the small plates.
Yeah, we'll take a look over the defensive side, which has been an absolute revelation for New Orleans this season. Danny Stutzman right here, the Young Cats, and the way that they have had an impact. Well, of course, Chase Young and this New Orleans Saints defense have been very impressive, but especially since he's gotten back in this lineup.
Yeah, no question. I wanted to put these numbers up just so you could see the last 6 weeks what the Saints defense has done. They're 4th best in the NFL in passing yards allowed and 5th best overall in total defense. And I say that because that does affect greatly what you do in the offseason, and we're going to talk about that. How close is the defense? Our dinner guest tonight, our favorites of all time, Catherine Terrell from ESPN does a great job. Seth Lewis from here at WWL. And Ross, I'm making the drink. It's a very fall-inspired apple brandy classic. Ooh. Not really a classic, sort of a new drink, but it's delicious. It's called Fall from the Tree, very apple-forward. And the game this week, the Tampa Bay Bucs, I said it means a lot more to them. It does. The Bucs 7-5. They're only a half game up in the NFC South. They're the 4th seeds in the NFC, but they're only 2 games from the number 1 seed.
NFC is so contested right now.
So contested. It's a noon kickoff, a game you can only see here on Channel 4. And yes, the Bucs are 8.5-point favorites right now for this game. Yes. Okay, going back to Kellen Moore.
Yeah.
Where do you stand with Kellen Moore? Are you still cutting him slack, or are you maybe starting to say, okay, we got to see more out of your offensive decision making?
I think the latter is fair. Let me start there.
Very
fair. I think that it's very fair to say, hey, you're the offensive genius. Where's the genius of the offense, right? Like there's some element of that for sure. However, I am cutting him slack because he inherited someone else's offensive personnel. You look at the starters from week 1 last year, the starters from week 1 this year, minus a couple of spots, 3. Same roster. You added Brandon Cooks. You didn't have Taysom Hill because of injury. You added Calvin Banks Jr. and then you had a new quarterback. So that's kind of it. Those are the only big changes. And so I'm looking to see now moving forward if the Saints get the right roster for him and the roster that he wants, if maybe the offense comes to life.
Well, I kind of teased the question. Has Brandon Staley and the defense shown enough that you keep all these pieces in place, pray DeMario Davis can come back for another year and be as unbelievably good at 37 as he is at 36?
Incredible, by the way.
Incredible story. Do you invest almost all of your resources in the offseason on rebuilding an offense and say, you know what, the defense is playing pretty good right now as long as we can keep Chase Young on the field.
Yeah, I think you still look to add some pieces over the defensive side. There's no doubt about that. But I do think that if you're taking this to 100%, you're spending 80 to 90 over on that offense of assets, Doug.
Yes, that's what I mean.
Not just money. I'm talking money,
everything.
Draft picks, free agency signings, trades if you want to do more of that. Remember, they got another wide receiver, Jalen Polk, they haven't gotten to see yet, all that. So I look at the offensive side as the must focus, the big time focus for the Saints this offseason.
Yeah, if you're bringing in, 7 premium players, high draft and free agency, let's just make it up 7. At least 5 better be on offense.
Yeah, and one of the reasons why you're spending so much on it is because of the positions. You're rebuilding your offensive line, you're adding to your wide receiver room, you're probably looking at your running back room as well. Lots of premier spots to go and spend money on or spend assets on.
Spend high draft picks. Okay, we're going to bring on Kat and Seth in a second, but first we want to tell you that the Ultimate New Orleans Sports Show is brought to you tonight by Kia of Covington. Buy happy, drive happy with Kia of Covington, the home of the lifetime oil changes, KiaofCovington.com. And welcome back to the Ultimate New Orleans Sports Show. Our guests are here. First of all, Catherine Terrell does a great job covering the Saints for ESPN, and Seth Lewis, who does a great job covering everything for us here at WWL TV.
Thank you both for being here. Kat, I want to start with you. We were just talking about Tyler Shuck. I'm going to ask you the same question, 2 parts. Have you seen enough from Tyler Shuck to say that he's the guy for 2026? And do you think Kellen Moore has seen enough to say that he's the guy for 2026?
I was actually thinking about this. I was driving over here.
This is what we think about in our spare time.
Football in my spare time. I think that I'm starting to maybe have seen enough.
Yeah.
I need to see a few more games, but I am impressed so far, enough that I would understand if they went with him next year. Mm-hmm. I think Kellen Moore has probably not seen enough yet, because that's the biggest decision you can make for your franchise. You can't just pick a quarterback on a whim, right?
Right.
So I think he needs to see more consistency. And to be fair to Shuck, he is missing a lot of offensive pieces. So if he can really get anything going, I think that's huge going into next year.
Yeah, making this offense run with this personnel, it's a challenge, no doubt. What do you think, Seth?
So for me, I think we've talked about it a lot, how Shuck can kind of play the Saints out of being in a position to get their next quarterback. If you look at Tankathon right now, the Saints are third. The two teams ahead of them are the Tennessee Titans and the New York Giants, who don't have a quarterback problem. You know that they will be going into next year with their quarterback. And so I think that, especially when you play the Titans coming up, when you play the Jets, there's going to be some opportunities for him to, and I would agree with Kat. I've been impressed with how he's looked so far, but I still think that there's more before you can say he's the starter in 2026.
Yeah, I think that makes a ton of sense. And to Kat's point, not only, if you're Kellen Moore, not only are you picking your quarterback, you're tying yourself to that quarterback.
Yeah.
Right? Like that's
that's
often
your legacy right there.
That's often what we talk about with these new head coaches is the head coach and then the quarterback that he brings in, those guys are tied together.
And sometimes coaches only get one.
They get one chance sometimes. Yeah.
I mean, you got to win to get a second quarterback. Yeah, and that does change the narrative, although Tyler Shuck was so Kellen Moore's guy. And I will say, of all the criticisms of Kellen Moore, and you just said they're all legitimate, the one thing that he handled perfectly was how he rolled out Tyler Shuck. How he played him just enough in the preseason. We saw him at the beginning of training camp, and he was a duck out of water. He looked lost. He was holding the ball forever.
Ducks are usually okay.
No, I know. Is that the ball?
Fish out of water.
Fish out of water. No, you're right. Ducks are good out of water.
Ducks are typically okay out of water. They're a little grumpy.
I understood the analogy.
Me and Jamie have to always stay away from cliches. We get them wrong every time.
He was waddling.
He was waddling.
There we go.
Yes, but look, the way he gave him the long leeway to watch and play with the scout team. By the time Tyler Shuck played, he was a different guy than we saw in training camp, and he's looked better.
Yeah, big time. Is that one of the best things that you've seen from Kellen Moore is the handling of player development?
I thought he handled it really well, and just like you said, Doug, at the beginning of training camp, he really was far behind Spencer Rattler, which was, I understood that. Rattler had a full year in that system. Or, with the Saints, I mean, not necessarily in that system. Right. But I thought that Shuck really came on at the end of camp, but he still wasn't there. So the way Kellen was able to finesse that, I'm sure there are hurt feelings, but it doesn't seem like it was, detrimental. I thought that was really well handled.
Yeah. But that said, this offense, when you watch that first half Sunday, it was so difficult to watch. It was painful offense. It was painful offense, and it's Kellen Moore's offense.
I was about to say difficult to watch. It might be a compliment.
Yeah.
Compared to what it was, and I think that sometimes the troubling thing can be that they disappear for whole halves. In multiple games. Yeah. And so, obviously, you watch that second half, and there is some encouraging signs there. The fact that they were able to get it to a 2-point game, and then you have an onside kick, and then you have a chance to win it, but the offense disappearing like that in an entire half is certainly concerning.
Yeah, and you look at the slow starts for this offense in particular. 19 first quarter points so far this season, and they've never scored more than 7 in a game. That is last in the NFL.
That's bad?
That's bad. That's
19 first quarter points, so you're averaging 1.5?
Yep, 12 games in, right? Not what you would want if you're Kellen Moore and you're drawing it up and saying, this is what I want to achieve with this team.
Well, now, when I brought that up before about the defense, look, they're top 5 in the NFL over the last 6 weeks, and your eyeballs will tell you that. They have played really good football over the last 6 weeks or so. Do you agree that 80 to 90% of whatever resources you have go on the offensive side this offseason?
I mean, I think it has to be that way. If you watch the Miami game, I will disagree with you. You were talking about Demario Davis, and I obviously think the world of Demario Davis, but I do think that the Saints can't say, well, Demario played well, Cam played well, let's just run it back. They do have to be unemotional, as we've talked about before, when they make those decisions. But they have to fix this offense. You're right. It needs to be probably 90-10, right?
Yeah, I think that's close. I think that's good. Do you think 90-10, 90 offense, 10 defense?
I'll go 85-15.
There you go.
Let's go 85-15. I just want to shout out Danny Stutzman for like clotheslining the guy.
The literal Goldberg speed. Out of nowhere.
Like even watching that boring first half, it was like, whoa.
Yeah.
We all did that in the press box. I think everyone was like, oh, wow, look at that.
It's like some kind of power bomb.
Yeah. He was something else. And he's one of those guys, like we were talking about player development from the Tyler Shuck side, but we're seeing it over the defensive side as well. You look at Quincy Riley, Jonas Sanker, Danny Stutzman, and some of these other younger players, like even Isaiah Stallbird that's getting mixed in. They've done a really good job with young player development this year.
Yeah, and look, when you brought up the two veterans, and these are very much veterans. Cam Jordan's 2 sacks, and Seth and I were talking. Kellen Moore's line is second action plays for Tyler Shuck. Both of Cam Jordan's sacks were 100% of the credit to Cam Jordan.
Absolutely.
But they were both second action sacks. They weren't sacks like at the 3-second mark. They were sacks where someone else fed them right to Cam Jordan in a beautiful way. But there is no metric for studying Demario Davis's play where he has not had a spectacular season. 100%. Pro Football Focus, I think, had him as the 5th best linebacker in the NFL right now. And they, look, it's an imperfect system.
Right, but they apply it to everybody.
And I think my eyeballs tell me the same thing. If Demario Davis wants to play next year, I'm 100% on board with running him through again.
Yeah, you at least got to give him to Paris if you can.
Yes, he's the Paris ambassador, right? I think you just can't focus completely on that. You can't, because when drop-offs happen, they drop off hard. So you just have to have a plan B. You can't just have Demario. But I'm with you. If he wants to play next year.
Yeah, and plan B is Stutzman.
Figure out a way to get him on the team.
That's not a bad plan B, as it turns out.
Yeah, and what your thought when you look at that defense? Because it's a lot of young guys getting a lot of snaps. Sanker and Quincy Riley and Stutzman. You've got some pieces on defense that feel pretty good.
And we've talked about just how valuable that is, right? Like having those young guys, getting those snaps like a Quincy Riley, maybe earlier than what we expected, right?
For sure.
But and they went through their lumps. I think about the Patriots game, right?
Yeah.
And that didn't look very good, but it's those necessary reps that had to happen, and you're seeing it come to fruition a bit.
Yeah.
Also, a part of it is that maybe the schedule is also getting a little bit easier, as we talked about as well. But you have to see it at some point. It doesn't matter if the team is 1-10 or 10-1. You have to see some positive results at some point, and the defense has certainly shown some good things.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right, let's do our boil water advisory now. Now, we've only got about a minute and a half, so let's be quick on these. What is the most distressing thing? Boil water advisory, of course. Everybody in New Orleans, everybody in New Orleans knows what that means. What is the thing making you react like a boil water advisory?
You already touched on this, but for me, it's offensive play calling. I need to see more consistency. He gets a pass this year. I think there's going to be a lot of eyes on Kellen next year and how he calls those plays, because some of them the last few weeks have been a little head scratching.
For me, it would be the run game. Obviously they didn't have Alvin Kamara last week, but that's been very inconsistent, and I don't know if it's necessarily the run scheme or if it's some of the blocking, but that's something that has to improve.
What you got?
I think for me, it's protection in front of the quarterback. We've seen a lot of sacks over the course of the past couple of games, and some of those pressures have turned into turnovers. I think getting all that taken care of, especially this weekend going up against Tampa.
For me, it's the wide receiver position, and I hope that the Saints management understands how dire their need for wide receiver help is. When you watch, one thing I like about a view in the press box is that it's above everything. You see, there's not a lot of people getting a lot of separation. And I think Vele and Olave will be way better players with a number 1 to take the main coverage, and they can play around them. I hope they understand how desperate that position is. All right, when we come back, you know what time it is?
Last call!
I do want to say tonight we have got a 1-hour live Ultimate New Orleans sports show, and on this show, the only way you can see the second half hour is by joining us on the live stream. That's WWL Plus. So go ahead and switch over right now. You just download the app for your TV and watch for free.
All right, everybody, welcome back to the Ultimate New Orleans Sports Show. It is now time for the last call. That is where we make a drink and give a think. This will be an opportunity for us to make our cocktail and then give kind of our final thoughts for the show. Doug, you're on the cocktail today. What you got for us?
This is one of the traditional Mouton Christmas cocktails.
Ooh, okay.
And it's a beautiful fall cocktail. It's called Fall from the Tree, but what we call it the Mouton House is the Johnny Appleseed. All right, it stores apple brandy. You can make brandy from any fruit. Apple brandy is sort of the Waffle House of liquors.
Okay.
It's amazing and cheap. Yes, I love apple brandy, but it is like the lowbrow alcohol of choice. So it's an ounce and 2/3 of that, and then you lean into the apple. It's an ounce of the apple cider, and then this is fresh lemon juice. It's a 1/4 of an ounce of Mouton squeezed lemon juice. Then I made this beautiful cinnamon syrup, which I'm using 1/3 of an ounce and 1 dash of Angostura bitters because they go in everything. Now I am making the drink, so you take over.
I thought when he said that this was the Waffle House,
It's better drunk.
I thought it was the same. Makes you stay up late and get fights.
There we go.
That's
Oh,
right.
I like that.
Well, that's good too.
Let's get to our last call here. Let's start off. Kat, you want to start us off?
All right, so it's almost Christmas, so I will say what I'm thankful for
Love
in
that.
a season that has been a little tough. I am thankful as a reporter for storylines that are, it's the gift that keeps on giving. Christmas story. Not a Christmas story, Christmas vacation.
Christmas vacation, right.
Christmas vacation. Wow, that's
Like a duck?
so ashamed.
She's talking about a duck?
I'm thankful, one, for Charlie Smith, who
Yeah.
has been the best story of the week.
Yeah.
If you saw those videos from Ireland, just a
man.
whole pub cheering
Yeah.
for him, and they did get free drinks if he made a kick, so that's probably why they were cheering
That
so
helps.
much.
It helps.
The pub gave out 144 free drinks.
Wow.
But it's so cool to see him inspire an entire country, just all these kids that are watching him that might want to, play American football.
Yeah.
And also I'm thankful for players like Cam Jordan and Demario Davis
Yeah.
that I get to watch them continue to play at a high level all these years later. I think that's
Yeah. 144. Wait, 144 free drinks?
144 at the time we talked to him after the game.
That's
So
awesome.
it could have gotten bigger.
I like Charlie Smith even more.
If these drinks are good enough, you might tie them. Tonight alone. Seth, what do you think?
So first, I want to give a shout out.
Yeah.
Actually, to my sister Gab, who made the Forbes 30 Under 30 list
let's go.
earlier today. So that
She's
was
the
like,
superstar.
that's
She's
really-
the superstar in the
She is
family.
the
I'm
superstar in the
sorry.
family. Yes,
I'm
that's
sorry.
100%.
That's
And
awesome.
then for my take, man, South Louisiana was the center of college football
Right.
this weekend.
Big
Not
time.
only obviously Lane Kiffin coming to LSU, the hottest candidate, and LSU got their guy, but also Tulane then going and Florida with John Sumrall.
Yep.
And so, I mean, it's been very interesting. There's been a lot going
Marshall
on.
Faulk.
And Marshall Faulk
Right.
going to Southern,
Yeah.
a New Orleans native. So, I mean, a lot of really exciting things happening in college football. And it could continue on Friday if Tulane wins the American and then clinches their spot in the college football playoffs. Exciting times.
Big. That would be big.
All right, I'm almost done, Ross. So why
All
don't
right,
you
perfect.
finish while I finish these?
So I'll roll into mine here. Mine is similar to Kat's. I want to go with a positive storyline around New Orleans. I'm going to highlight Devon Vele. This is a guy that we've been waiting for a long time to see, first of all, get his opportunity and then take advantage of that opportunity. He became the first New Orleans Saints wide receiver to catch 100% of his passes in a game where he was targeted at least 7 times. Since Michael Thomas. Now, I'm not saying that he's Michael Thomas. Let's not get too excited.
You already said it.
But I didn't say that. But I mean, that's the kind of receiver that this team has needed. It was great to see him fill that kind of a role and then have kind of this breakout game.
All right, let's take a sip. Tell me what you think.
All right.
Well,
Well,
first,
cheers.
Cheers. Who are we
To
toasting?
you. Cheers to you.
Oh,
Thanks for being
to
here
the
with
New
us.
Orleans sports
And happy
fan who's had to
holidays.
endure this football season.
I'm so sorry.
We're so sorry.
Oh, that's really
That's great,
good.
Doug.
That is good. All right, I'm going last. And
Yeah,
I'm
you go.
doing Lane Kiffin again, all right? And I got 4 points to this. One, Verge Osbury did a spectacular job. He inherited chaos and made delicious chicken salad out of this and got the #1 coach in America. Congratulations to Verge. 2, Lane Kiffin and LSU are taking a ton of criticism for the timing and taking a coach away from the college football playoff. This is the system the NCAA set up. LSU is playing by the rules of the system as they are now. If Lane Kiffin wanted the job that he thinks is the best in America, this is when he had to take it. Change the system, but don't blame LSU or Lane Kiffin by playing by the rules of the system as it exists now. Third, I sure hope LSU finds a way to keep Frank Wilson. I'm a huge Frank Wilson fan, and I hope he's stays. And fourth, I think the biggest reason Lane Kiffin is going to be successful is because of his ego, because he's not afraid to make people mad.
Yes.
This job in Baton Rouge is big and intimidating, and I think he will handle all of that and the pressure of it without any problem because he doesn't care.
Yeah,
and I think that's
absolutely.
his biggest plus.
Doug, can I
awesome.
just say it is wild to see someone booed at one airport and cheered at another in a span of 2 hours.
And I love
incredible.
Lane
I
saying
love
that
college
fans
football.
were like, man, you're the greatest. He's like, we haven't done anything.
They were just trying to run me off the
Nothing
road on the way here. All right, real quick before we wrap up, because we got to get out of here quick. But Saints-Bucs this weekend, who you got?
Bucks.
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 Yeah, oh, sorry, everybody.
We want to see
No,
more
it's
second
good.
half than we saw first
Yes,
half.
yeah. Start like
All
you
right,
did.
tune into the app, WWL Plus. We're going for another half hour. Going to deep dive into Mickey Loomis. There's a lot to talk about. This might not be the best talk for Mickey Loomis, but we're diving into it. Thanks for watching this edition of the Ultimate New Orleans Sports Show. We'll see you on the app.
Saints Sports Show, this time the nightcap. Thank you very much for hanging out with us. If you were catching us live or you're catching us now, we thank you very much for being here. I am Ross Jackson. Sports Director Doug Mouton is here, and our wonderful guests, Catherine Terrell of ESPN and Seth Lewis from right here at WWL.
Okay, look, now we've got a few minutes. Let's deep dive. Here's what I hear from Saints fans a lot, is sort of some vitriol raged at Mickey Loomis. Yes, a lot. So where do you stand with Mickey Loomis right now? Should Gail Benson make the change now? Where do you stand with Mickey Loomis right now? Because Saints fans aren't, in my experience, aren't super high on Mickey right now.
Well, I think the rage started with the gum. All the way back to that press conference when he was defending Dennis Allen.
Yeah.
Just because I think that in fans' minds, it felt like the Saints didn't care about their feelings.
Right.
And I understand where they're coming from, but I think the reality of the situation is, as a lot of NFLers like to say, I think Dennis Allen used to like to say that phrase, is that Gail Benson trusts Mickey Loomis more than anybody.
Right.
You know, he's been around for so long. I just don't see a situation where he is not the GM unless he's promoted to a different, position in the front office. I just don't think Gail would ever say, you know what, we're done, just because of that trust there.
Well, it is kind of a will they, should they, just like we talked about with Tyler Shuck.
Right.
Will they? I think all of us would say probably not. They're not, Gail's just not. Should they, I guess, is the question I'm asking.
I think if things continue as they are, then they need to consider that. They really do, because how many years do you want a stadium that's half full? Do you want fans that are upset? Because the fans aren't just upset about the Saints; they're upset about the Pels as well. And so you have fans that are, looking at two of their beloved teams that just aren't producing on the field. And I know that the Pelicans do not fall under Mickey Loomis, but it falls under the organization or ownership as a whole. So I don't think that there's a bad thing to do a total reset. I just think realistically, that's not how the Saints operate, and they never will operate that way.
Yeah. I'm gonna jump in because I think I look at this maybe a little bit differently, in that I think, let's say that next year doesn't go well. Not only do I think in that case the Saints should consider a change at general manager, I think they would do it.
Yeah.
I don't subscribe to the idea that I agree with the trust,
right?
But to the idea of
that they never will,
that they would never do it, I don't think so. And the reason why I say this is because Gail Benson, from everything that we understand, she was the reason why Dennis Allen was out.
Yeah.
Right? She was the reason that he ended up being taken out and fired. That's what I was looking for. How was that the word? How is that the word? I can't think of.
Man,
Duck.
Mafia.
I know, right? But then the other side of it too is this is the opportunity for Mickey Loomis to show, I can rebuild this team and I can do it. I didn't look at Dennis Allen as a rebuild option. I looked at Dennis Allen as a scrawling and clawing to hold on to what was option. This is the rebuild. That didn't work. Now you're in the rebuild. You went and you hired this 36, 37-year-old head coach, youngest active head coach as of right now, and you're building an offense around him, or you're building a team for him, and you're still building his offense, which again didn't really change personnel-wise from one season to the next. And so I think if you fail to do that and you don't find the success in 2026, I think at that point, that conversation does happen, and maybe it takes the shape of the Saints moving him to another spot and things like that. Maybe it's that way, but I think at that point, trust, no trust, whatever it might be, if the job's not getting done, the job's not getting done, and you gotta let somebody else have a shot at it.
Yeah, I was gonna say he's not getting fired.
No.
That just ain't happening.
Yeah. Not
you know
this
what I mean?
year.
Like if fans want that to happen, that's fine. I want $1 million, but I don't see myself getting that in the next couple days.
You want to be the star in your own family.
I want to be the star in my own family, and I'm not. Right? And shout out to Gab. So, I think
I'm turning the most positive thing in your life into a negative.
No, it's a positive. 100%.
It's so positive.
Look, we're not gonna expound too much, but it's like I always tell people, Gab, who's Forbes 30 under 30, as I mentioned before, I always call her the star. You know what I mean? And obviously she says the same thing about me. But I think that, to what you're saying, I don't know. I mean, I see the thought of, okay, she did get rid of Dennis Allen. She was the one that called it on that. It wouldn't surprise me if you go to the Pelicans with Willie Green, if there was some input of, okay, I think it's time, like the crowds, the way that they're losing isn't good. but also like
You gotta go back to David Griffin too.
And you gotta go back to David Griffin too. But she trusts Mickey Loomis so much. Like those other people were employees. This is her friend. And so that is where I'm not sure if she would be bold enough to pull that trigger and say like, hey, we need you to step aside. I think it almost would have to be Mickey Loomis saying, for the better good of everything, I'm going to step aside. And maybe it's somebody getting promoted like within their front office.
Yeah, they have options.
They have options, and they have people that are like highly regarded within their front office. So maybe it's that, but I almost think that it would have to be Mickey Loomis that makes that call. I don't know if Gail would do that.
I think in any case, the verbiage will be a mutually agreed upon.
Oh, yes.
decision.
Oh, yeah,
I
that's
think
the
there's
verbiage.
no doubt about
No
that,
doubt.
right? Because that's the friend play. The friend play is not, hey, you're fired.
No, of
the
course.
friend play
Yes, that would
is
never happen.
Right,
Not like
right.
that.
Not
No.
like that.
No.
The friend play is, we got to make a change here. Let's talk about how we orchestrate it together.
All right,
how
look,
we do it together.
I don't mean to say this, and you talked about you were thinking about the Tyler Shuck situation while you were driving. This is what I was thinking about today when I was driving. I was thinking about the Mickey Loomis situation. And this is going to be a deep dive that I do at the end of the season and lay out all the numbers and the facts. But my general opinion is that all of what's happening this year to the Saints is a direct result of mistakes they made in 19, 20, 21, 22, and maybe 23, right?
Absolutely.
We are seeing the fruits of a bunch of bad drafts, giving away draft picks. Kool-Aid McKinstry, who I like, and I think he's having an okay season, I'd say, was 3 draft picks, those kind of things. Giving away draft picks, poor draft picks, and not making the right moves, spending money in the wrong places.
Bad contracts.
Bad contracts. This is what happened. If you actually look at what Mickey Loomis did this year in 2025, this looks like a really good draft.
It does.
I like what they did in free agency by getting Chase Young, by Justin Reed looks like an excellent piece in the back end of this defense. Devon Gottschall looks like a good piece. Like, I like what they did by not overspending. This wasn't mistakes made now. This was mistakes made a few years ago. And in retrospect, and look, I was not against the Dennis Allen hire, so I'm not going to say that I was. But in retrospect, that was where you really went wrong.
Right.
Because Dennis Allen clung to the older players, because even when you did make great draft picks, no one asked more questions about Zach Bond than you.
Right.
Ross would ask Zach Bond questions 3 times a week when the guy wasn't playing. And I'm like, why is Ross asking so many questions about Zach Bond?
I mean,
because in a limited amount of use, he was very productive. So even when the Saints made good draft picks, Dennis Allen wasn't going to play him because he wasn't playing any young guys. So Caden Ellis, who was a terrific player, didn't get played and left. So the mistakes were made a couple of years ago. The first year of the rebuild, even though the record does not show it, I think the first year of the rebuild, you might have a quarterback, and you do have 4 or 5 or 6 other pieces. I think they've done a nice job of starting a rebuild in 25.
Yeah, I agree with that.
And I was going to say, Dennis Allen solidified an opinion for me, I would say for the most part, which is, because I've seen it in college too, sometimes when you have a coach that's been really successful, right? The thought is like, okay, we want to keep this thing together, right?
Extend it.
And we want to extend it. And it's like, if you had a chef who made a really good dish, and you think that that other chef is gonna come in and make that dish the same way, you're wrong.
Yeah.
Like, that dish isn't gonna taste the same. You need to go get a chef who has his own signature dish for your restaurant and make it happen. And I think that I'm gonna use Tulane as an example. Like, when Willie Fritz went to Houston, they didn't say like, okay, let's hire one of Willie Fritz's assistants.
Did not.
Yeah.
They did. That's
hired
a great
the best
comparison.
coach
What Ole Miss just
in the
did, by
country.
the way.
Yes.
And that is what Ole Miss just did. It may have been by desperation, but they did just do that.
They had no choice.
They had no choice.
Wait, can I call a quick 20? Does anybody else need
Oh
a
yeah,
drink?
me.
All right,
for sure.
I'm
I was waiting for you.
Beauty of this show is I'm getting another
I was
good
waiting
show.
for you.
Yeah.
But yeah, like they hired the best coach available in John Sumrall, who was up for P4 jobs 2 years ago. Now they're ranked. They're 1 win away from being in the college football playoffs. And what John Sumrall has done at Tulane is solidified them as the best job in the group of 5. Can you imagine saying that about Tulane pre-COVID?
Yeah.
In
Right.
2021,
That's a great
they had 2
comparison.
wins.
Really good.
Tulane did it right. They didn't try to hang on to what they had. got a completely new guy, and Summerall was awesome, and they're going to probably do it again.
Yeah, and so the Saints didn't do that. You know, they decided to keep a chef from the same kitchen, and then the restaurant fell apart.
That's a great analogy.
Yeah, there's a big difference between, you know.
No, that's an awesome analogy.
Yeah, right.
Probably.
I think to your point too, just about like the way that we've talked about Tulane and we've talked about LSU. We even talked about Southern earlier in the episode as well over on Channel 4. And I think the thing that stands out to me is that the Saints in their own city have become a B block team.
Yeah, they were Sunday.
Right, and that's kind of wild to me because I don't remember that being the case growing up here and watching this team. And even going back to the 2019 national championship run for LSU, what the Saints were doing was still important.
Yeah, the Saints were in the playoffs.
Yeah, and so right now, like playoffs. And so I think that when you look at where the Saints are right now, and one of the reasons why I do think that, like, look, if they come down to it and they do need to make a change, they will do it, is because of exactly what you talked about connected with this. You don't want the half-empty stadiums, but you also can't rely on previous success anymore. You were great from 2006 to 2020. Since 2020, you got a 40% win percentage. You ain't cooking with that.
You ain't cooking with that.
We don't have a Hall of Fame quarterback to bail you out.
Yeah, that's right.
That too.
And a Hall of Fame head coach.
Smooths over so many issues. And I think, honestly, 2025 has been the year of the Saints trying to dig out of this hole or cover up some of these mistakes. You know, they went to Cam Jordan, and he took a huge pay cut from the $12.5 million to $6 million with incentives.
Massive.
Before Tyrann Mathieu retired, they went to him, and he took a pay cut. Taysom Hill redid his contract. I think that they got bailed out with the Derek Carr situation, and now that's looking a little better this year and next year, and salary cap wise. So it was a lot of, we got to fix all of these things. We have to undo these things that we did so that we can be set up better for the future. And next year is the real year that if you don't produce, people are going to be saying, well, what was it all for?
Right.
You know?
That's right. Because right now you're digging yourself out of the hole that you created. Right?
Exactly. You are fixing the mistakes that you made I keep saying this, of being emotional, of holding on to people, because in the NFL, it just doesn't really work to hold on to things because players get older, they get more expensive. I mean, it doesn't get easier, it just gets harder.
And you know, it's funny, I think that when they were winning, that was probably something that was a good card in their favor.
Oh, yeah.
You know what I mean?
100%.
Because, like, if you're a free agent or if you're somebody that is, like, maybe seeking to go to another team by trade, you know that, like, okay, if I go to the Saints and if I perform well, then I know that they're not going to discard me, opposite of, like, what the Patriots did. You know what I mean? Like, the Patriots would get rid of guys early. Like, they would still have another Pro Bowl season or two, and then maybe they would fall off of a cliff. The Saints are the exact opposite. And so when they were winning, that was a good thing. But when you're losing and you're still holding on to those sentimental values, like, there's just a point where you need leadership, right? You can't just have like a bunch of college kids in the locker room, essentially. But, like, there is a time where it's like, okay, we thank you for everything that you've done. You're a Saints Hall of Famer. You're a Ring of Honor member, whoever you are.
But
legend
of the game next
legend
year.
of the game next year. Yeah, a lot of legends of the game.
Some of the legends are going to look up.
I do think too, like, to your point, just about the way that's structured, like looking at the free agency additions from this past year, there were some guys that were really nice, Justin Reed, Devon Godshaw, but it stands out to me that the biggest additions or free agency moves were either guys that were already here or guys that were from Louisiana.
Absolutely.
Right?
Absolutely.
And I love that, but also, it is telling.
But there also were some head scratching decisions, like re-signing Brandon Cooks, and then you had to fix that mistake with the contract because you know, Brandon Cooks was great for the Saints his first time around. He's had a great career, but he was coming off a knee injury. He was older, and when he signed, I just thought, is that going to be their number 2 or number 3? Because there's a lot of question marks there. And so then they guaranteed a lot of money in the second year and had to fix that situation. And
that was
trying to fix that situation.
But emotional, they knew him, they liked him. It's, you know, it all kind of comes back to that.
And a lot of people question the Juwan Johnson contract too, to be honest. Based on maybe some of the production that we've seen and where he ranked as far as his pay compared to other tight ends in the league.
Yeah, and he turned out to work out off that contract.
He's
playing well, but 100%. That was a big question mark at the time.
All right, I got a new topic. All right, let's say the Saints pick between 2 and 7 in the first round, which seems likely, right? in the first, let's just say the positions, the talent is equal among these positions. What becomes your first priority? Where do you draft first? If there is an equally good guy at every spot, where do you hit first?
See, that all comes down to the quarterback, right?
Yeah.
Is it a quarterback?
But
if
today-
it's not, to
today
me, if we're taking the quarterback out of the equation, I would say wide receiver.
Yeah, makes sense.
Yeah, see, for me, I was going to say wide receiver because if I had to go off of just what we've seen so far, and let's just say they were at number 3, like they are right now in the Tankathon, that probably means that there's a team trading up to get whoever the number 1 quarterback is in the draft class, which ironically, can you, like, before the season, what happened?
What happened?
What happened? We were talking about like 6 or 7 guys being first rounders, and then now, I don't know if it's Mendoza from Indiana or whoever it is.
Dante Moore from Oregon?
Man, every time I see somebody on a list, with all due respect to them, because they may end up being a quarterback in New Orleans.
Yeah,
right.
all due respect.
With all due
Just
respect.
don't worry about this. Just don't worry about this. Just don't worry about this.
But like when I see some of the names that come up, I'm like, ew.
Especially
compared to what it was. Like, I mean, like we were talking about
yeah.
Drew Aller, and we were talking about Nuss, and we were talking about Cade Klubnik, and we were talking about Lenore Sellers.
Yep.
I have a friend of mine who texts me every time Lenore Sellers plays and says, hey, I just want to remind you about what I think about Lenore Sellers. And I'm not going to even tell you I'm not going to fill in the blank. But
No,
he's
we
like,
get it.
Hey, Lenore Sellers, still out.
I'm super curious what you will say. Probably not interior offensive line, just because you don't take that at 3 or 4,
I'm
right?
gonna say, I'm gonna tell you right now, I do not care. I do not care what the position is next to the player.
You do not.
Could not care less. Now, obviously, there's a limit to that, right? You're not drafting a kicker, you're not drafting a punter, you're not drafting interior offensive line.
Saints
that early.
have drafted a
But-
punter in the first round before.
I know.
Just want to bring that
That
up.
is true.
Although
But
he was a kicker punter when they
Oh,
drafted
oh,
him.
wow, that
he was
sounds
the
like-
guy. Well,
that's
no,
right.
look, he was the guy to get his Russell Erxleben we're
All I'm
talking
saying
about.
is his name is not on
Was
that
that
wall
79?
in the dome.
Well,
Yeah, right.
it is not.
Yeah, he ain't been a legend of the
He
game.
was going to be the last piece that gets you over the hump.
Right.
He was going to be the all-pro kicker and the all-pro punter, all in one amazing Texas
the game
Longhorn
is crazy
package.
different.
Somehow that feels so Saints.
Yeah.
The game.
At
I
least
mean, I
in
was a
that
kid
time.
at the time, and I
In that
remember
time.
that vividly.
The game is crazy different. My thing is, and you know, the hypothetical you're setting up here is that they are all the same talent across the board. So I'd have to go either wide receiver or edge rusher, just logically.
Yeah.
But like, if one of those players is Caleb Downs, the safety out of Ohio State,
Man, listen.
I don't care that he's a safety.
Listen,
Right.
We were, I don't know if it was with you or with Ricardo, but there's a lot of like talk of like, okay, if there's a safety in the top 5 or the top 10, you don't draft a safety. I'm like, we're not talking about Caleb Downs.
No.
You can't be talking about Caleb Downs, because
Yeah.
if that dude is available, that like, I mean,
you ain't talking about a safety, you're talking about the safety in that situation.
like okay, most cases, but like if Kyle Hamilton is on the board, you take
You
Kyle
take the guy.
Hamilton.
Right,
what are we
right,
talking about?
right.
So like, and this is a team that like they can't be like, oh, well, we don't want that guy.
because
Like,
we're okay at it. No, you're not.
No.
You're not.
You
And
pick
so-
best available.
But the logical part is premier position wide receiver.
Premier
Absolutely.
position, yeah. You get edge rusher, they can
Give me
certainly use
Arvell
another
Reese
one.
all day long out of
Man.
Ohio State, and I'd be that's
Premier
Yes.
position. That's
Premier
a Kellen
position.
Mooreism.
It is. And they
I said it
already
first.
talking
I said
like
it first.
him.
I've been saying it forever.
And it's funny how as soon as Chase Young came back, all of the pass rushing numbers got better for everyone, just because he's going to take all of the attention. So everything got better, but edge rusher I think is still on the table.
Another signing that's worked.
Another signing that's definitely worked.
Props to Chase Young, because I realized today he leads the league in pressure percentage.
Pressure percentage. There you go.
And the Saints are one of the
19%
best
of his defensive pass rush snaps.
It's been the big difference in the last 6 weeks.
Yeah, and
no
the Saints
question.
have been one of the best teams in the NFL in converting pressures to sacks, which is something they did not do well last year.
Oh, I like
From
that.
17.4% last year to 22% this year.
This is one year when I am hoping that someone goes nuts the way Jacksonville did for Travis Hunter and offers the Saints a bounty at 3 or 4, and they can still get a first-round pick and get some other stuff. I just feel like this team has so many high-profile needs. I think wide receiver is probably number one, but interior offensive line and edge rusher, you can never have enough.
Right.
But this is a year that, man, if you could get somebody overexcited about pick 3 or 4, wherever they are, I'd love to see them get 4 picks for that.
If Tennessee and the Giants are up ahead, obviously teams are going to be calling them to go up and get that quarterback. But if they love the prospects at the top, like most of us love those prospects at the top, and all of a sudden the New York Jets at 7 and I think 24 pick up the phone and call you and say, we got 2.
Yes.
And they need a quarterback.
Yes.
There's an opportunity.
We'll give you
now,
7 and 24. 100% in.
It's nearly been 20 years. 2007 is the last time that they traded back, if I remember that correctly. I think that was the Roman. No, the Roman Harper year was the year before that, and then after that they traded back one time. Never again after that. So it would be a big time shift.
I brought up the Jets when I was doing my 4 takeaways a few weeks ago when I was talking about the Saints rebuild, just to say, and the Saints are obviously in the midst of a complete rebuild. Just because you rebuild doesn't mean there's going to be playoffs on the other end.
Right.
The Jets have been rebuilding since 1969 when Joe Namath won them a Super Bowl. And they have been in a perpetual rebuild. And I can't remember the number now, but it's like 7 quarterbacks, either in the first or second round since then. I think of the Chad Penningtons. And none of them got them where they want to go. So just because you're doing doesn't mean you're going to get there. But yes.
And Chad Pennington was elite compared to that list.
Wasn't he the guy that hit a reporter with a football in training camp one year or something like that?
I can't even remember.
Was that Chad Pennington? I can't remember. It was like by accident. He sailed one out of bounds.
If it comes to mind, I mean, I would assume you're right.
Yeah, I don't know.
All right, look, we got about 6 minutes left. I'm curious. You're an LSU person. You like the Lane Kiffin hire?
I just think that we're sitting here 5 years from now talking about how Lane Kiffin left LSU for another school.
What other school?
Nah, see, I don't believe that's gonna happen.
Yeah, I don't believe that's
gonna
happen.
Why don't you
Wait,
believe
what are the other
that?
schools that could give him more?
I don't know. Texas, Ohio State. I'm
Those are actually really good answers. Those are really good answers.
Anyone gets mad at me that's watching, I'm just saying, just because you always say it's not going to happen to me, then it happens to you.
What, messy breakups? Sure, yeah.
I don't really have a lot past that, but so there's not many premier top jobs. Like I was discussing this with somebody earlier today, like what are the jobs in college football? Because somebody said, well, what if Alabama opens up?
I've actually been talking about this all weekend.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, everybody has.
Everybody about.
Like, what are the top jobs?
What jobs are better?
And like you can argue that maybe a Texas or an Alabama or whatever or Ohio State is better, but are you leaving LSU for that? Like I think there's probably about like 8 or 9 jobs that are at the top of the list. Tier 1 that nobody's leaving. And then there's like some tier 1.5 schools like Notre Dame and Oklahoma, whereas like they might leave. Like Oklahoma's coach went to USC. Right. Notre Dame's coach actually came to LSU.
Yeah, no, there's proof on those.
But for the most part, people aren't leaving those schools.
And where's Ole Miss? Tier 2?
Oh, no.
Tier 3?
3 or 4. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Wait, what?
I think the fact that you're in the playoff, for me, would be 3 would be the lowest I'd go. Because you're in the playoff.
Yeah. 3, sure.
In all seriousness, I do think it's hard to say what 5 years from now will look like because it's all going to be about NIL money.
Yeah.
Which schools are raising the most NIL money? What does that landscape look like? How much can you fix your roster with? And I think that it's so unknown.
Yeah.
I feel like there's no rules right now with NIL, so it's all kind
so
of
unregulated right now.
the guessing game, right? As to which schools will be at the top in a few years.
And another big reason why I feel like he wouldn't leave is because like when he was talking, obviously LSU, he's like, "This is the best job in America." You can't say that. You can't say that about Ole Miss. Like, come on, you know what I mean? Like,
He didn't.
You can say that about USC. Right? Like you can say that about
maybe 20 years ago.
It's actually one of the reasons I think Lane Kiffin will work at LSU in a big way is because what he did at Ole Miss, when you talk about NIL money and the transfer portal, he did a great job of talent evaluating and bringing in the right guys. His quarterback from Ferris State everybody had a shot at. LSU went out and got Michael Van Buren, and he brought in a quarterback that has him in the college football playoff. That is a talent of that from Ferris State. That is seeing things in that quarterback that other people didn't see. Other people in tier 3, 2, or 1 didn't see.
Temple saw it.
Temple, he's sure. Yeah, but they're not tier 1, 2, or 3. He saw things that other people in tiers 1, 2, and 3 didn't see. And that ability to talent evaluate, I think, is going to be a huge difference maker at LSU. Because now he can use the talent evaluation and he'll have the money to get whoever he wants.
Absolutely.
Did anyone see the picture of his first night at LSU where he was already recruiting and he looked like he was about to fall asleep? I was just thinking, that is crazy.
I thought you was going to ask him, did you see the picture of him already doing hot yoga in Baton Rouge?
I did see that tweet. I was just thinking how crazy college football is that you go through all of that in a week and you immediately have to go recruit people to your team.
It's insane to me that he got off the plane and then went to LSU's campus and then he had this meeting and that meeting and this recruit pulled up with his parents and it's like, what time is it?
Yeah.
What are y'all doing?
I do want to thank Lane Kiffin for just giving us the most entertaining week in college football in the last year or two.
Yeah.
I mean, it's always something. But
you know what I learned?
Like you know what I learned? Soap opera.
What I learned was that in Baton Rouge there are 14 yoga places, and in Oxford there are 4. So Lane Kiffin's got a lot more yoga choices.
Shout out Chris Marler. Shout out Chris Marler.
That's the difference between tier 1 and tier 3.
10 hot yoga locations.
Sure.
I know that I'm looking forward to LSU Ole Miss game next year.
Oh my
But if he went to Stanford, there'd be a lot more yoga places in Northern California.
Yeah, but there's also a lot more books. You know what I mean? I don't have the full computer system of how elite goes. Cause I'm sure Tuscaloosa has somewhere between 4 and 14, but they also have so many trophies. So all right.
They also do have the trophies.
So on that note, how many wins does LSU get next season? What do you like? What? Or let me say this. Let me do it this way.
Are they in the playoffs?
How many wins would you like to see from them to feel like Lane Kiffin's immediately successful?
I'd like to see them in the playoffs.
In the playoffs, I think that's the bar.
That's a big thing.
If we're gonna go through all this drama, it needs to end with LSU back in the playoffs, right?
Immediately.
And what we've seen from the rankings is you can make the playoffs with 10 wins, right? There's a couple teams that's going to be on the outside looking in with 10 wins, but you can make the playoffs with 10 wins. So you're trying to get a 10-win regular season. We've talked about this. Ole Miss has 11 10-win seasons in their history. 4 of them came with Kiffin.
Yeah, in the next 5 years, I think he's got to get to the playoff 3 times to be a success. All right, we are wrapping it up. This edition of the Ultimate. All the drinks are empty. I hate to say it, we're going to have an after party with more. Thanks for joining us on this edition of the Ultimate New Orleans Sports Show. Good night, everybody.
Yay.